I could finish this part on Korean culture this morning, but I'll try my best. Okay? So, as you could recall, we've covered up to 4 Korean beliefs, 4 out of 5 key words in understanding Korean culture. So today we will continue with Korean values. And we covered some of the most important American values, right? And we started talking about Korean values, and I think 5 were mentioned, right? Could you tell us what those 5 were? Wow, we covered 7. All right, so I don't know if I could recount all the ones that he mentioned, but I'll try my best. Collectivism, education, hard work, wealth, what else? Elderly respect, and so on, okay? So, well, I'm gonna go through each one of them, and some of them, I would say many of them will be familiar to you, but a few will be rather surprising. Yes? Yes, our TA is working on that. So of all the values of Koreans, the most important ones are the following, okay? So this is also from the American list, right? Success. So success could mean a lot of things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean materialistic, okay? But in the Korean context, oftentimes it is materialistic, okay? Wealth, which was mentioned. Third, health and long life. You know, I don't know if did I mention this distinction between this worldly religion and the other worldly religion? Yes or no? Okay. World religions can be divided into 2 types. One is the other worldly religions. And these religions include Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and did I mention Buddhism? So it includes all the major religions of the world. And what's the other worldly religion? The ultimate focus is the next world. So take the example of Christianity. Can there be any substance to Christianity without the promise of eternal life after death? Heaven, salvation? And how, if you're taught to endure suffering and to do good, for what? The ultimate reward is the eternal life in heaven, right? So in the case of Buddhism, the key concept there or doctrine is reincarnation. Depending on the karma, things you do in your life, you accrue so-called karma, I don't want to say points, but depending on that, you are reborn as either lesser being or higher being. So you devote all of your life trying to accrue as much karma as you can, okay? Again, all for the purpose of reincarnation, okay? Now, the other type of religion is this worldly religions, this world, okay? Now, if the ultimate sort of goal or purpose or the aim of the other worldly religions is the next world. This second type, the focus is this world. And in this world, before death, what are some of the things you could enjoy? It's long life, health, and prosperity. That's what the best of this world could offer to you. Okay? And religion that is so disworldly is shamanism. Okay? Because its teachings do not say much about the next world. It just simply mentions once you die, your spirit roams around the earth for a few days maybe, and then moves on to the next world. That's it. And everything else is now and here. Okay? So that's why once I'm done with my presentation today, you will understand why when Korean scholars are asked to identify the most important religious traditions from which Koreans derive their sense of identity, their religious worldviews, they mention shamanism and Confucianism. Okay? Now, so third, health and long life. Fourth is filial piety. As I mentioned before, there was no term for hyo in English. They came up with it in the process of translating hyo, the concept of hyo in Chinese into English, right? And what does hyo sort of contain in terms of values? It requires the sons and daughters to be always nice to their parents, to obey them, to respect them, and to take care of them in their old age. So to this day, if you put your parent or aging parents in a nursing home, it's still sort of a looked down upon. It's sort of seen as a taboo, okay? Because you're not really carrying out your whole responsibilities, okay? Whereas in the West, it's quite common, right? I think aging parents sort of expect that they will eventually, end up in nursing homes, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying there's this cultural difference in how aging parents are dealt with, okay? And also ensure male heirs. And also, I guess one of the most important aspects is to conduct ancestral rites after their death, okay? Fifth is ancestor worship. These sentiments of filial piety are reinforced through ancestor worship, also called cult of ancestors and veneration of the dead. Now, does everyone understand what ancestor worship is about? You know, the Catholic Church banned Catholics from performing ancestor worship when Catholicism was introduced to Korea in 1782. Okay? Why? One of the 10 commandments in Christianity is thou shalt not commit adultery. Idolatry, right? You know how, as Christians, you should not idolize other gods. Now, so this is, now Koreans could practice ancestor worship, okay? Because with the Second Vatican, in the 1950s or 60s, they changed a lot of ways Catholic Church do things, including conducting Mass in local language, okay? Until the Vatican II, I think I mentioned this before, all the Mass all over the world were conducted in Latin. All of that changed with the Vatican II, and also ancestor worship, which until then was prohibited, was now, considered a cultural practice. Now, this is what ancestor worship is. When people who believe in ancestor worship gather together for the ceremony, they actually pray to the spirits of their ancestors, like you do to God, You know how if you're praying to God, you say, God, please do this for me, right? And with ancestor worship, you pray to your, let's say, grandfather's spirit or the great-grandfather's spirit, asking for their blessings, okay? So that is why it is said by some religion scholars that the first real form of religion in human history was ancestor worship, okay? Our ancestors were able to expand that to create something new, and that happened to be this supernatural being, God, right? Anyway, ancestor worship is based on the principle of the immortality of the dead ancestor. So the ancestral rite itself is called 제사, okay? And we Koreans conduct ancestral rites on their death anniversaries, in the case of parents and grandparents, and on significant cultural holidays like Lunar New Year's Day and Korean Thanksgiving, okay? And one of the reasons why it is said that the Koreans are the most Confucianized people in the world is because we are the only people in the whole world who still practice 제사 in large numbers, okay? Studies show that anywhere between 50 to 60% of Koreans, including Christians, still practice ancestor worship, okay? Compared to like 10 to 20% in China, you know, maybe not even 10% in Japan. I mentioned these two countries because they are also Confucian cultures, right? And this is what it looks like. So they set up a table full of foods with an ancestral tablet in the middle with their names of the deceased, okay? And sometimes picture. And this is a syncretism where you have a Christian symbol cross. If the deceased happened to be a Christian, you also put the cross there. And once everything is set, you sort of take turns, okay? I think traditionally, only males were able to do this, okay? But now females also do it. But this is what you do, prostrate, right? And is deep bow the same as prostration? Anyway, we do prostration one time to the living. For example, on Lunar New Year's Day, when we all get together with our family members, we do prostration before our parents or, all the relatives once. Now, for this particular ritual, you do it twice, okay? Because it's for the dead, you prostrate twice, okay? There was a joke where you have to prostrate 3 times. It'll come up later. Why am I showing you this? There have been so much complaints from all these wives who had to prepare all these foods. Although this particular picture doesn't indicate that she or the women of this particular household had to do much preparation, but if you go back to this slide, you know how all of these had to be like personally prepared, right? And typically to this day, women do all the work, okay? And that's why there's even a rumor that at the time of, around the time of the Lunar New Year's Day and Korean Thanksgiving, that divorce rates spike, okay? Because of the stress of preparing all these foods over a few days. It's not just something that you could do it in a flash, like in an hour or two, okay? So that's why entrepreneurs came up with this idea that you just order all these ritual foods online, right? And one inside, that's what you see. So all the things you need to use for as ritual foods are in one box, okay? 6 value for Koreans. I just put the numbers because I think it's more convenient. The basic unit of Confucianism is the family, okay? The individual is defined in relation to her or his family. The individual is born into a family, and his identity largely comes from the family. And that is in sharp contrast to the West, where in Western philosophy, and it's just the ways of thinking, right? The individual is the most fundamental unit, okay? Whereas in Korea, again, the focus is more on the family, culturally speaking. 7th is collectivism, and I would also put conformity together, because that's what collectivism breeds, okay? And even though both collectivism and individualism coexist in any given culture, there's a typo there, one of the two is apt to be dominant, okay? Western cultures, individualistic, or where individualism sort of rules supreme. And in Asian cultures, including Korea, of course, the dominant values happen to be characterized by collectivism, right? Individualism tends to pursue personal identity, rights, and needs rather than the group's identity, goals, and needs. Collectivism, on the other hand, gives the group, and the groups could include all of these, right? And also nation, okay? Priority over the individual. In collectivism, the word we is more important than the word I. The world, there's a typo again. Word person in Korean is ingan. And it literally means a human in relationships. Isn't this amazing? Okay. I don't know if a person has a Latin or French origin, and I don't know what it means, but at least in Korean, person, individual, ingan, is literally has this meaning, a human in relationships. All right, this is a list of characteristics that sort of characterize individualism on the left hand and collectivism on the right hand. Okay, so I'm sure some of these are familiar to you, but the rest rather unique or different, or you're seeing for the first time. But is there anything here that catches your attention? Or in full agreement, or sort of has some reservations about? Yes. All right. The reason why individualism is associated with high creativity and collectivism, low creativity, is this: to be creative. For example, if you could look at or think of all the inventors, famous inventors throughout history, were their ideas met with wide acceptance, or were they ridiculed? And it really took some guts to really, pursue their ideas. Now, in Korea, if you stand out, if you have some new ideas, they ostracize you to death. Oh, of course, I'm exaggerating. But sort of a negative reception may be universal, but the difference is one of degree, where here, we just, children learn to always, abide by the rules, respect the rules, and do what everyone else does, okay? That's why Sometimes policymakers say, you know, we need to change. We got to let individuality or individualism to become more part of our life, because everything in Korea right now is about being together, being similar, right? And we need to overcome that, okay? So since you mentioned that, I hope you could do a little bit of homework, whether this really makes sense, okay? If it does, why? Or if you disagree, you could email me with your reasons why this distinction you don't agree with because of this and that, okay? But this is, I think, a really nice list, okay? It's not, so I got all these characteristics from many different sources, okay? So you won't find any image that has all the characteristics that you find here. And this is also a very nice image where this is the West, where the self and significant others and friends and acquaintances, there is a clear detachment, okay? Whereas in Korea, you don't really have a detached self. There's this greater sense of interdependence, okay? So me in the West is this, me in Korea is this. Way of life, pretty much on your own, but in Korea, you know, together, right? You know why his picture is there? Because when he was I mean, he's still a cultural icon, right? But when he was still living, and Apple, the company that he made very successful, was a talk of, I guess, the global community. The policymakers and the media asked this question, you know, and at the time it was a very, very hot topic. If Steve Jobs was born in Korea, someone like him, okay, back in 1955, could he have become someone like Steve Jobs? And you know, guess what the answer was? Resounding no, okay? All of his creativity would have been thrown away, and no one would have invested any money in his company. No one would have saw what he envisioned, okay? And that's where the collectivism comes in. One of the explanations or interpretations, okay? So, well, you could do your own exploration, okay? Now, this is a very powerful image. Just giving you a sense of how extensive this collectivism is in Korea. I would go as far as to say it's stifling, okay? Because all the rules, norms that you have to follow, I would say, you know, of course, wherever you come from, you have your own set of norms. But I think Korea could really count as one of those countries with very, very strict and stifling norms that really do not give you freedom to really be yourself, okay? This is a picture from a graduation ceremony, and you see how everyone, not everyone, but pretty much, if you, unless you wore something that everyone else accepts, you know, then you pretty much feel left out, okay? All right, eighth, this one was already mentioned, and because I'm gonna cover it under education, I'm not gonna say much, other than to say that to Confucius, a few things were very important, right? Family, social order, inequality or hierarchy, and education also counted as one of the most important aspects of his teaching. Okay? And the reason why what he said mattered was because of what he was such an influential person. If Jesus Christ had such a influential sort of things to say, his counterpart in Korea, China, and Japan is Confucius. Okay? And he argued that education makes a person good. Okay? Do I agree with that? Of course not. I've seen more crimes committed by educated people than people who are not educated. I would say more serious crimes. Do you know what I mean by more serious crimes? What costs the society more money? People just stealing things from houses here and there, or tax evasion, for example? Tax evasion costs society much, much more, in the hundreds of more times than little burglary there and so on, right? So anyway, next is deference to the elderly, which was already mentioned. So this is a nice, this picture nicely captures the essence of this deference to the elderly. And this is another thing I sort of do not agree with Confucius because of this. Well, before that, I want to ask you this. Why is showing respect to the elderly important? Can anybody answer this? And I'm sure not too many of you may have thought about this question. Yes. Oh, very good. So we need to show respect for the wisdom and knowledge they may have, right? Yes, I saw a hand over there. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Very good. All the answers I need are there. You see, treating everyone with respect is important, of course, but treating the old people with respect is more important because, they should be, respected for their wisdom and also for the sacrifice they have made for the descendants, right? Like, we wouldn't be here today without our, let's say, grandparents, right? And that's the thing. But again, with that in mind, I would still prefer something like the golden rule, like treat others the way you want to be treated, okay? In Christianity, it goes like this: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And similar ideas are found in all the major religions, okay, including Islam, Judaism, okay? So, again, if I had a choice between treat the elderly with respect versus treat others the way you want to be treated, I will go with the latter anytime, okay? 10th is emphasis on hierarchy. So, you know how, let's say, for example, in the American case, equality is emphasized, okay? Very biblical in origin, right? But in Korea, the emphasis is on hierarchy, okay? Because if everyone wants to be equal, Confucius believed that that creates chaos, okay? And because also that, people have different abilities, there should be a clear hierarchy so that there is no confusion and there's no chaos, right? And when it comes to establishing hierarchy, the most important criterion is the age. As I mentioned, I think last class, when Koreans meet, and within 2-3 hours before they part, they pretty much figure out, each other's age, what university they graduated from, and where their hometowns are. Okay? Again, this picture nicely captures the essence of the inequality that exists in Korea. Just to give you a sense of how important this is, let's say you work for a small company with like 5 workers. Do you think employees can call their boss or treat the boss as friendly as they can, or you think there should be a clear hierarchy? It's the latter. Okay? No matter how small the company is, the boss is the boss. Okay? 12, is the numbering correct? There's a jump in the number. So it should be 11th, hard work. And so it is, when you talk about the reasons or factors for Korea's remarkable economic success, one of the factors is the hard work of Korean workers. Okay, they've endured long hours of work under poor working conditions, and again, hard work is one of the key factors for the rise of Korea as one of the largest economies of the world today. Next is faith in the fulfillment of wishes through prayers. I will think about this in my free time myself, but can this be a value? Well, think about it, and you could email me about this, but let's just see what I have under this particular item or title or subtitle. Well, this is where the distinction comes in, and so this is also detailed in the first textbook. So shamanism is considered, as far as religion is concerned, we mentioned 2 religions as having the most profound influence on the Korean worldview and ways of life. Now, Confucianism is more about how you should behave in social settings. But if you just stick with religious worldview, religious practices, the predominant influence comes from shamanism. Okay? And the reason why we say that is this. New religions that were introduced to Korea, whether it was introduced more than 2,000 years ago in the case of Buddhism, or Christianity, which was introduced to Korea in the last 200, 300 years, is that these religions incorporated shamanic elements to be accepted by Koreans. Okay? So let's first talk about Buddhism. Buddhism Buddhism is a polytheistic religion. Okay? It has many gods, and it deified 2 most important gods of shamanism. And what are they? One is Sanshin, mountain god. Second is Chilsung. And again, these 2 gods, most important gods of shamanism, have been incorporated by Buddhism. Okay? And And this is a portrait of Sanshin. So if you go to a Buddhist temple, this is a typical Buddhist temple complex, okay? And usually near the back or on the side, you find a shrine containing the portraits of both Sanshin and Chilsung, or just Sanshin. Okay? And when Koreans go to a temple to pray, they never miss going to here. Okay? So they pray to Buddhas and also to shamanic gods. Okay? And they have done so from time immemorial. Okay? So, again, I strongly suggest that to experience a Korean culture, visit a Buddhist temple. Again, you don't have to be a Buddhist to visit, right? So go check it out, okay? And this is what a typical shrine containing these shamanic gods are. So it's small, okay? And inside, that's what it looks like, okay? Portraits, okay? And usually there are foods brought by the followers of Buddhism. And also monks, Buddhist monks, have performed the roles of shamans, okay, to this day. Not every Buddhist monk does this, but some definitely do. They function as fortune tellers. They sell amulets or talismans, and also perform rituals for begetting children, prosperity, longevity. Okay? So the line demarcating shamanism from Buddhism and vice versa has been blurred from time immemorial. Again, when Buddhism was first introduced to Korea more than 2,000 years ago, when they preached about meditation, no one would listen. Okay? So that's why they, incorporated shamanism. Okay? And in the form of two ways, right? One was they incorporated shamanic gods, and monks acted like shamans. Okay? So I think probably showed you already. So if you walk around Seoul, you will see many of these shops with swastika, right? Or Buddhist swastika. And these are all signs indicating that shamans have shops there, in the vicinity, okay? Or fortune tellers. Fortune tellers typically do not use that symbol, okay? It's shamans, okay? Here, it says exorcism, okay? So in general, lay Buddhists in Korea do not practice meditation, as I mentioned before. What they practice is to pray to Buddha for material wishes. And this is a typical inside look of a temple. And what do you see on the ceiling? These tags are prayer tags, where you give money to the temple, you put your name, and you put your wishes, okay? So if you, I've done this many times where I read the prayers, right? So it was usually for speedy recovery from illness of a relative, a son or daughter excelling on exams, right? Prosperity and so on, right? At Buddhist temples. And you'll also find these so-called electronic candles. So they have two functions. One is for the deceased. So you put a name, and it is to wish them well in the next world, or not next world, but so this is not necessarily Buddhism, right? Because after death, they should be reborn. But here, they are commemorating the deceased by having some kind of a Confucian element, I don't know. But it is definitely not Buddhist. And also, like those prayer tags, prayers with the names on it. So this would be a typical look inside a temple, where you have these prayer tags in the ceiling and these electronic candles on the side and the front. These worldly tendencies of shamanism are also found in Protestant Christianity. And the church, again, is the world's largest church. At one time, it had 800,000 followers. Okay, and the pastor, he's now passed away. He's famous for the threefold blessings of Christ. Okay, health, prosperity, salvation. You know, in a typical mainstream, mainline Protestant church, the message you hear is this: you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, you will be saved. You will enjoy eternal life in heaven. That's it. I'm talking about, again, mainline, mainstream Protestant Christianity or church. Now, this guy has added two extra elements, both from shamanism: health and long life, and prosperity. So he's preaching would be like this: you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, you not only go to heaven after death, but Jesus Christ will also bring you prosperity, you will live long, and you will be healthy. And guess what happened? When he became so successful, other pastors, you know, of mainline denominations like Presbyterianism, the Baptism, Methodism, they all follow suit because that's sold. So even to this day, you go to any church, you know, a preacher would say something similar, not like, you know, right out, but ultimately, you know, the subliminal message is that you become a good Christian and you will be wealthy, and you will also be healthy, right? That's the full gospel church. And if you're into sort of a exploration into any religion of any culture, Buddhist temple, and also this church, you know, I visited, although I'm not a Protestant, just as a observer. And they have the translators for English, Chinese, Japanese, and so on. So check it out if you have time. Other examples of the persistence of shamanic practices include a shamanic ritual called Kuocw. As you may know, if you have read the textbook, gut, G-U-T, is a shamanic ritual, right? And this Kuocw, which is to bring in good luck, is still practiced by large number of Koreans, okay? Believe it or not. And here are some examples, visual examples. It is commonly held on Lunar New Year's Day at homes and companies, by fishing villages and sports teams, among others. This Kuocw at a company, another company, more of a state-of-the-art, companies, but still doing this Korean thing. Kuocw for the safety of drivers. This is this particular picture is LG Twins, one of Korea's professional baseball teams. And although I have a picture only for this particular team, I'll bet you any money, every professional sports team does this for a successful season. Okay? So again, Kuocw is held to pray for good fortune of the given year, which is, let's say, next year. Okay? So that's why it is held on Lunar New Year's Day, right? And you can bet any money that fishing village will hold this Kuocw every year, if not more often, for the safety of fishermen. And this this held by a village which produces tea leaves. Kuocw is also held for special occasions like these. Beginning of a drama or film shooting. Have you guys watched The Glory? 오징어 Game? Squid Game? You could bet your money that before the first shooting, they held Kuocw, okay, for a high rating. Purchase of a new expensive equipment. Sometimes when Koreans buy new cars, they hold Kuocw. Just very informal, but they still hold it nonetheless for safety. Korean SAT. Beginning of a hiking season. I've already seen a few. Okay. Building construction. And I'll just show you. Okay, here you go. On the drama set of Eden. So this particular clinic bought an expensive diagnostic equipment, and they hold this ceremony so that the machine works well. Okay. This is at a high school before the SAT. Okay. So at the time of the beginning of the hiking season, which is now, right? Spring. You'll see many of these. Not just, let's say if you go to any mountain in Seoul this weekend, you'll see a few. Okay? So there are these hiking clubs which would host these ceremonies for the safety of hikers. And this is what is called 상냥식, and this is held once the framework of a particular construction is completed. This again, not only for the safe completion of the construction, but also once the occupants move in, that they have good luck. Okay, and we're talking about these major companies, okay, hosting this ceremony, right? Also, at the personal level, like for a private home, some people hold this ceremony. Okay, the last value, before I get to talk about emerging values, is the belief in fortune telling. Okay? Maybe even this one, you may have a question mark. Can this be a value? I think this one is more value for sure than the previous one. But anyway, surveys show that a large number of Koreans believe in fortune telling. And how do we know this? You can only, if you just casually read astrology on a newspaper, that will not be considered an active follower of fortune telling. See, all over the world, surveys asking people whether they are active followers of fortune telling, it depends on whether you pay money for the service, okay? Now, in Korea, anywhere between 40 to 50% of Koreans have paid for fortune telling service at least once in their lifetime, okay? But some surveys even show higher percentage of Koreans who have paid money for fortune telling service. Now, just for fun, how many of you ever paid money for a fortune telling service? Hands up. Just me and him. Okay, very few. I don't know if you're being shy, but anyway, I've seen survey results of other countries, but like in England, North America, and let's say in the West in general, anywhere between only about 5 to 10% of Westerners have paid money for fortune telling. So you can see how Koreans have much higher rate of people who have paid money for fortune telling service. This simply shows that they are more attuned, they are more attached to this fortune telling practice. That's what it shows, right? Now, Koreans' penchant for fortune telling is also indicated by a large number of fortune tellers. There are over 300,000 fortune tellers. Fortune telling cafes, online fortune telling services. Okay, one, I don't have it on this slide here, but we have this one famous online fortune telling app. It was downloaded 10 million times by Koreans. Okay, that accounts for, roughly 20% of the total population. More than 10 million times at the last count. This is what a shaman's place would look like. Okay, I did go just to get a sense of, I could access all the pictures on the internet, but I wanted to see it for myself. I went, and I'm not saying these are the pictures I got, but this what it looks like. Okay. And you see, you notice from the previous slides, Sanshin, right? Usually there's a Buddha statue too, okay? Because shamanism is a polytheistic religion as well. And typically, fortune tellers do not feature the Buddhist swastika. They just have the signboards, but by reading the signboards, we know that the fortune tellers are there. This says fortune telling cafe, okay? And inside, it typically same cafe as anywhere else. But once you sit, you could ask for a fortune teller to come and give their advice. We also have fortune telling tents. And the forms of fortune telling, and I'm sure you're not familiar with these, are as follows. So the first, most popular is what is called 사주팔자. It is a divination based on birth date and time. I've always been curious. For young people your age, do you know what time you were born? Is it a general knowledge, like practically everyone knows? And again, this particular divination, one has to know the time of birth. And I've always wondered how, when watches were not common, like like 100 years ago, how did they do this? Anyway, and there's a Kuocw, which is a fortune telling on marital harmony, and you don't have to be married to get this done. Okay, you could take your lover and go to the go to a shaman and say, we're dating right now. How do we look? Okay, as a future couple, kind of, right? Third type is Kiril. It's a foretelling of auspicious days for wedding, moving, and starting date for a new business. Okay, and some Koreans really take this seriously. Okay. Fourth is physiognomy. It's the practice of assessing a person's character or personality, which is something that is also practiced in the West. But we have added a sort of a, for Koreans, physiognomy is more about reading the person's fortune, okay, especially from the facial features, okay? And these are some of the features. I'm not gonna go through them. Next is geomancy, feng shui, right? And yes, some Koreans take this very seriously, where descendants who feel that they're unlucky, they sometimes relocate the grave site of their ancestors in the belief of feng shui. Okay? So I've already given you at least 2 terms that you should look up in your free time: physiognomy and geomancy. Okay? What these ideas really entail. Okay? And the most surprising ones are this. Surprising one is this: belief in lucky names. Well, because I have only knowledge of Western names, I'd like to ask anyone who has a knowledge of where Western names come from. See, we have a clear tradition where the names we ultimately choose, the hope, the wish that we have in giving a name to our children is that the names will usher in good luck. Okay? I know for sure that as a rule, that is not the case in the West. Okay? You don't give your child a particular name so that he or she becomes successful or that, he or she becomes lucky. Okay? But Western names, for example, have certain traditions. And you know where they come from? Anyone? Yes. Bible. So biblical names, saints' names. What else? Family. Meaning? Oh, you mean, okay. Name from your own grandmother or grandfather or someone from your family tree. Okay? All right? Anyone else? I think it is covered in the textbook, but I'll just read a few examples. Okay? Well, some names are just words from English vocabularies, like words from nature, colors, birds, flowers, like rose, iris, dawn, jasmine, right? But some given names originate from aspirational personal traits, like patience, faith, okay? Victor. But some really interesting ones are that names derive from occupations. Did you know that George means earth worker, like farmer, in Greek? Spencer, anyone here who is Spencer? It means steward or administrator. Anyway, the rest you can find in the textbook. Now, all right, keep in mind that we give names typically to our own children in the hope that the names will bring them luck. And we often give the naming or ask fortune tellers, okay, to come up with names, given the birth date and time. And when the fortune tellers or name specialists give names, they always argue that this name must be kept if you want your child to be successful or to become lucky. Okay? And the tragedy, that's how tragedy for so many Koreans began. Okay? Why? The list of names I'll be showing you are real names, and they pronounce exactly the same as you see. Okay? But in Chinese, it has a wonderful meaning. All right? And here is a partial list. There's so hundreds, thousands more, but these are the ones that are most shocking. And here we go. These are real names, and the meaning in brackets. I'll give you some time to digest. How would you like to be stuck with the name moron? Yes. What about prostitution? Every day you're called, hey, what about sperm? That's a girl's name. Okay? Again, these are in Chinese and with meaning, and usually good meaning. Okay? But in Korean pronunciation, it sounds this funny. Okay? But you can see, I hope you're not just laughing at this, but to get a sense of how desperate Koreans are to give good names to their children. Okay? And sometimes you have these names which are pronounced together with a surname coming first, and the list goes like this. Ghost. Pregnancy. Martian. Slave. And so on, right? So you can see how many Koreans, because the names sound funny, and of course they were subject to a lot of ridicule, they have applied for a name change. And I don't know how many other countries have so many people applying for name change because they believe that the names they have are not bringing luck to them, and also because they sound funny. Okay? So here's a partial list of the number of applications for name change. Okay? Before I turn to the emerging values, I want you to find time to actually visit this mountain. It's not far from here. 독립문 Station on third line. You'll find 인왕산, and the steps look like that. That's what it looks like a gaudy like structure. Yeah, it's all natural, not far from here, and you could walk up to that particular point in about half an hour. Okay, again, 독립문 Station. You always find some people praying. So the last two values, right? Faith in the fulfillment of material wishes through prayers, and also belief in fortune telling, sort of show you how shamanism is important to Korean psyche and their religious worldview, right? And it's sort of shown in our everyday language too. And ask yourself if in your own language you also say the same thing. We so often use the term lucky or unlucky. Okay? And do you do that in your own language too? See, if I step on a poo on the street, in English I just may say S something, right? But in Korean it'll be O S, and then you say no luck or unlucky. Okay? And that's so much about shamanism. Okay? Anyway, that concludes my sort of a presentation on the Korean values. Okay, all 5 now have been covered, but by extension, as promised, there are emerging values, right? And I think one was already mentioned. Can you think of any emerging values of Koreans? Do you remember the one that was mentioned? Beauty. Okay, that's one. What else? Environment. Thank you. 2. Fashion. Not on the list, but it's, I think Koreans are, when it comes to wearing like fashionable clothing, I think they're pretty, how do you, it's difficult to measure though, right? But I understand what you're trying to say. All right, anything else? Yes. All right, so that's catching up. Individualism, okay? So I added at the bottom with a question mark, okay? But it's probably safe to add that now, right? Especially among young people, right? Anyone else? All right, so this is what I have. Emerging values are, again, values that are more recently developed, patriotism, leisure. Okay? You know, Koreans are now much into spectator sports, entertainment, you know, movies. Korea has one of the top 10 movie markets in the world, and musicals are getting really hot too, right? They're also into physical fitness. You know, so that's why dieting is big, and also working out, right? It is definitely, I could see this compared to like 25 years ago, and now physical fitness much of a bigger concern to many, many more Koreans than ever before. Fourth is youthfulness. So we all want to look younger, okay? So with all the different hairstyle, use of facial cream, cosmetic surgery, Botox injections, and so on. Fifth, concern for the environment. I guess it's almost universal now, right? To be concerned with the environment. And the sixth is romantic love. So I'll be talking more about this under family, but marriages used to be used to be a matter of convenience rather than affection. But now people do care more about romance, and it's all due to the advent of the mass media, television, the radio, books, novels, magazines, and so on, which glorify romantic love. Yes. Oh, okay, I think that's a very good point. From the point of well, it's like this. You know how with the values on the family, reality may not fully reflect the value, right? So yes, we do, although Koreans do care more about environment than before, when it comes to their own practice, you still sort of see a wide gap between what they believe or what they think of as being important and how they're acting. Okay? For example, did you know that large majority of motor vehicles being driven by Koreans are mid to large size in this small land with no oil? Again, you look, the only other country that has more mid-sized to large-sized cars than compact cars is the US, Canada, and Australia. But they have oil, okay? But so if you're concerned for the environment, you shouldn't be driving this gas-guzzling big cars, right? But anyway, I don't know what else I could say. But yes, we have a long way to go still to also, if you really care for the environment, you shouldn't be eating so much meat, okay, like Koreans do. Okay? All right. Gender inequality is catching up. Although we have a long way to go in really achieving a respectable level of gender equality. Eighth is looks, the beauty, right? The cult of appearance, okay? So this is from a few years ago. These are the 5 finalists. And on a casual look, you may go, aren't they the same person in different dress? They're not. They're all different women. And it is believed that every one of them had a plastic surgery done. Okay? So the broad forehead, narrow chin, okay? And double eyelid. Okay? Well, this is only from 2011. I couldn't find an updated data, but when it comes to the total number of plastic surgeries, Korea is not number 1. It's the number of procedures per 1,000 population, which shows you that Koreans have the highest rate of plastic surgery in the world. Okay? All right. All right. I'll let you go. I'll stop here. And actually, this concludes all the discussions on Korean culture. And next week, we'll start with the next issue, which is the Korean family. Okay? Thank you.